Welcome to the Energy Insights Perspective series from Delta EE. I'm David Trevithick, Principal Analyst and Lead on our Energy Insights research at Delta EE. Energy Insights, which we term the consumption data and interface for residential energy customers to access and benefit from, lies at the heart of many customer engagement and digital transformation strategies. And we have a research service dedicated to this topic. This series of Energy Insights Perspectives narrows down on one topic within this market. And today we'll be discussing how to adapt energy insight solutions to different European markets. We bring in an industry expert to debate this topic, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Rob Merrington, Board Director at Onzo. Welcome, Rob. Do you want to introduce yourself and Onzo for our audience?
Yeah, thanks ever so much, David. So Rob Merrington, Sales and Marketing Director at Onzo. So we are a SaaS-based company that works in the energy sector, and our vision is to influence every touch point energy retailer has with its customers. And we believe we can do that because we have a unique set of data, which is from raw smart meters, anything from 15 to 60-minute data. And that enables us to create analytics and insight that, when given back to an energy retailer, enables them to not only engage their customers in products and services, but actually gives a significant commercial benefit to the energy retailer. And by that we mean in areas such as reducing the number of calls into the call center, reducing customer debt, reducing churn, and increasing things like net promoter score. So we are in a position to make significant inroads into energy retailers' challenges, if you like.
Great, thanks, Rob. Well, today we're talking about how to adapt energy insight solutions to different markets within Europe. And some of Europe's biggest energy retailers, the likes of E.ONs and EDFs, for instance, have large geographic footprints spanning multiple markets. And other successful retailers like sort of OVO Energy and Octopus Energy, for instance, are looking to expand internationally. And for any company spanning more than one country, creating a consistent customer experience across markets can be challenging, as each country has its own specific characteristics. Obviously, a company might have different strategic imperatives in different markets. Regulation, market competitiveness, their relative market share and customer churn rates might vary widely, which would impact on the goals of any energy insight solution. Then there's the technical considerations around the infrastructure. So progress on smart meter rollouts, for instance, will vary widely in terms of availability, data granularity, and speed of access to consumption data. Country differences in climate, sources of heat and electricity, and EV penetration may determine the important loads and tools to consider, such as air conditioning, solar PV, gas usage, or EV charging, for instance. And then there's variance in the housing stock and home ownership, which may impact on energy insights like social comparisons and personalized messaging around energy efficiency. And then, of course, there's things like the language to take into account if you're developing solutions to be embedded in smart speakers, for instance, or other voice channel communications. So, Rob, I'll turn to you. There's quite a lot of things there to consider, and a lot of data in detail really that sits behind those factors I mentioned. In reality, how much similarity or difference is there between the European markets that you need to take into account when you're developing a new energy insights proposition?
I'd say there's significant, actually. I mean, it does depend on the markets that you operate in, but from Onzo's perspective, we deal entirely in Europe currently. So, and we go from, I suppose, the Northern Hemisphere, such as the Nordics, down to Spain. And there is some significant differences in those markets. Some of it is as simple as reliance on both fuels, so gas and electricity. So in some instances, such as Spain, there is less use on gas and it's more electricity dominant, as well as areas such as Norway. Whereas in the UK and the Netherlands, for example, there's much more emphasis on both gas and electricity as fuels, and equally in heating, which plays a significant part in disaggregation. Gas heating is still sort of prominent again, as I say, in UK and the Netherlands. In areas such as Norway, for example, you'd expect the heating to be more variant. So there is ground source heat pumps, there is air source heat pumps, there is even community heating, and that sort of and even wood fire, but sort of burning. So which makes a difference when you're sort of undertaking the analysis. Climate is a key consideration for us. So in Spain, we have probably 12 different climatic conditions in Spain in the model that we operate. So you can go to northern Spain, which again is sort of a little which is more sort of similar, I guess, to some of the UK you'd expect, and then the middle of Spain, which is a complete desert. So you'd sort of you have to make allowances for that, as well as nuances in terms of usage. So again, sort of cooling becomes an area that you need to consider more when you start to get to areas that where temperatures clearly are higher. So we notice a sort of a significant amount from that point of view. Then again, when we've done some recent analysis, for example, on COVID-19. So we did some analysis across our customer base in terms of their customers' habits. And actually what we found in terms of the consumer was that there was an awful lot of similarities actually across Europe. So every day was starting to look like a Saturday, in effect, as people started to work from home. You saw an increase in areas such as, not surprisingly, home entertainment or refrigeration, or actually washing and laundry started to increase as well. So, and that was less market influenced and more sort of generic across some of those markets.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Yeah. So if you can explain how you go about adapting to different markets, you're implying here that an off-the-shelf approach isn't probably viable, but what elements of a solution are transferable to different markets? What just needs a bit of refinement, and what are we talking about needs a complete rewiring? Maybe an example or two to bring this to life would help our audience.
Yeah, so I think some of our basic offerings. So in effect, if we looked at the breakdown that we offer to our customers, so there's 11 different breakdown categories which remain the same across the whole of our customer base. Some of the forecasting would remain the same. Interestingly enough, and you mentioned this in the intro, electric vehicles actually does differ quite significantly, actually. So electric vehicles, if you look at, again, the Nordics, particularly, it's 75% electric vehicles in Norway, yet in areas such as the UK and Spain, it's still very, very small. So that is something that is an area that definitely needs to be reviewed, and we undertake specific work on that. And even some of the microgeneration. So I think, again, you start to see countries, especially where governments or government policy has influenced microgeneration. You see, so whether that be PV, particularly PV, you start to see again homes or a wider penetration of a deeper penetration of homes with microgeneration within it. And again, we need to be able to recognise those homes and make adjustments accordingly. So I think areas such as in terms of how consumers are either generating or how consumers are using their energy, it does, as I say, there are similarities, but there are nuances that need to be reviewed. But equally, I guess the other piece, which is actually respective of for all operators that work in ONZO's space, the quality of data is absolutely critical, and that can vary across country. But equally, the other key element for all of the business such as ours is gaining, or is the energy retailer's ability to gain consent, and that is absolutely critical, because without the clean data and without gaining consent, then frankly our ability to produce sort of valuable analytics or insight is vastly reduced.
Yeah, and are we looking at a sort of typically a sort of 6-month time to get to market for a new solution in a new market?
No, I think we can do. Again, it depends on the nuances, but we've done it as quick as 8 weeks, and then some of it, then we will work with a retailer, because, as I said, there are some basic services you can still offer. There are new markets opening. and I think some of the service that we currently offer are certainly relevant to some of those new markets. In other instances, you're right that there has to be sort of we have to collect some ground truth data or some data that we're able to base the analysis on. EVs is an interesting, because actually you find that there is an awful lot of nuances in terms of an electric vehicle, in terms of whether the customer's charging them at home, whether they're charging them at work, the type of charger they've got, even the type of make or manufacturer of the car and the draw that car actually takes. So that there's some quite intricacies that you just have to start to try and get under the skin of when you're starting evaluating those types of activity.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And even if the speed to market isn't necessarily a massive criteria, the energy retail sector is traditionally very risk averse. So,
yes,
a service provider that has got experience in a market already presumably has quite a lot of advantage over competitors if they've got a successful solution there.
Yeah, I mean, energy. You're right. It's historically been a risk averse sector, and to be fair, in some instances with good reason. So I think user cases are absolutely essential. The ability to be able to demonstrate a proven solution, such as Onzo's, is absolutely critical in existing markets and new markets. Some energy retailers, again, will require trials, and we're more than familiar with undertaking that activity. I think what we've found historically and what we're finding now is that the trials, you can reduce the time of those trials. I think certainly with Onzo's experience now, we understand the key metrics that an energy retailer really needs to judge the service against, and the size and the scale of sort of the proof of concept that's required, and we're certainly very averse to making sure that we can run those relatively straightforward and frictionless, actually, in terms of the retailer.
Yeah. So some countries are only starting to go through their smart meter rollout process now, sort of countries like Austria, Belgium, Germany and the like. And we've also got second generation electricity rollouts on the doorstep in Italy and the Nordics, for instance, in the coming years. So together these countries will have learned a lot from what's gone on before, either in their own markets or across Europe. So what do you think we can expect to see in terms of innovation of energy insight services and customer take-up in these markets?
So I think two critical things again, and I'll come back to it because it is absolutely critical, is as the new markets open, and you're right, we're talking with a number of businesses in what you term the old Baltic states and places like Austria, and the advice that we give these guys is very much in terms of ensuring that the data quality is absolutely critical, because without that, the rest of it really becomes irrelevant. And we have developed a sort of a significant part of our product to enable to sort of improve data quality, both in terms of gaps and lags. And then the other piece that is, if you like, is an Achilles heel for energy retailers is their ability to gain consent and actually manage that consent. And historically, retailers have had sort of maybe 3 or 4 different levels of consent. And it's making sure that is cleaned and ready, so that actually the data becomes the consumer sort of makes the data available. I think that the piece you work with a number of different customers. I guess the first customer is a customer that is present in other markets, but has a market where they are present that is only just opening up for smart meters, and they clearly have an advantage because they are in a position to understand the benefits of what products and services could migrate across to that market. What are the key commercial levers that a service such as ours can address, as well as how best to communicate and engage with a consumer with a service such as Onzo's, and that's sort of it's critical, and we say to many energy retailers that let's start simple. In many instances, you only have one chance with the consumer to demonstrate that actually the service and the energy breakdown, if it's energy breakdown that you're offering, is accurate and is relevant. They have to see that benefit of what you're producing. And just producing a breakdown, for example, is in itself not particularly useful. The question is what the consumer is then able to do with it, and then how you're able to then start to target personalized advice for energy reduction and how to better use that energy that really starts to come to the fore. And that's something that Onzo has certainly managed to sort of demonstrate in terms of making sure that that energy, that customer has the right advice. So I think in terms of if for the energy retailer who doesn't have that ability to pull on, if you like, a group experience, then that is something where, say, we are in a perfect opportunity to, through the user cases, really to start to point them in the right direction, even to the extent of what they should be measuring, how they should be measuring, if they're going to run a POC, the size and the sample of that proof of concept, how long should it last? And I think that's where we can bring our expertise to bear, because there's benefit in the service we're offering, but I think it's really critical to understand what are the challenges that energy retailer currently has. And what you tend to find is they are pretty common across, irrespective of the market you operate. The challenges that retailers face are pretty similar, to be brutally honest. Reducing the cost to serve, reducing churn, and as markets open up, we find there's a significant variance in customer churn depending on the market you operate within. So I think it's sort of us working with that energy retailer to help them through that.
Yeah, no, understood. That's great. Yeah. So in summary, the data quality and consent levels are pretty key to all this. Experience counts, and a one-size-fits-all approach will encounter challenges due to the multiple differences across European markets, as well as the similarities, of course. But energy retailers and their vendors then really need to carefully consider the requirements at a local level in creating or adapting an energy insight service for that market. So Thank you, Rob, for your experience and for providing a bit more clarity on this topic for our audience. We'll be tackling other topics in forthcoming episodes of our Energy Insights Perspective series, so do look out for them. We have researched the energy insights market now for many years at Delta EE, so do get in contact if you'd like to discuss anything further there. So thank you, Rob.
Thanks so much, David. Thank you.
And thank you to the audience.